Good morning. Welcome back. Thank you for hitting the channel today. I appreciate it. Want to talk about some important subjects today amongst this beautiful spring morning. It's March 5th. Got some turkeys gobbling over there, some hens clucking. They're starting to get their harem put together for breeding. It's turkeys, they get a pecking order going on, and they have a fight for dominance. The toms are going to be going after each other, and then going after the jakes. The hens will go after each other, and they start to fight, and they get that order of who's in charge and who gets to breed. I'd much rather be sitting here making a video about that, but given the times that we're in right now, I thought it was much more important to discuss something that we have here in America that's unique, and that's our Second Amendment. I want to discuss how that kind of translates into what's going on in Ukraine, and I want to provide some observations that I've made of the people in Ukraine right now who, for sleepless days, going on 10 days at the time of this video, 11 days here, February 24th started, have been fighting for their lives and their freedom. So as you know, in America, we have our Second Amendment, and it guarantees us the right to keep and bear arms. We have the right to purchase firearms for the protection of our families, for the protection of our persons, to a lesser extent, the protection of our property, depending on circumstances. We have the ability to hunt. We can, any person here can take a hunter safety course. They can get a hunting license, buy a firearm, and hunt game, correct? You can't do that overseas in many countries. A lot of it's reserved for either super rich people, government people, or you just can't do it. We use firearms here for sporting purposes, competitions, IDPA, PRC, NRA, high power. We love our shooting sports. Scholastic Clay target program for youth shooters. I started a youth league here many years ago. That's continued on. This, I believe, is its 11th, potentially 11th year. I think it was 2011 when we first started that. Scholastic Clay target program is fantastic to get new youth shooters involved, and how you take a young person who's not shot, who's more into basketball or football, put them on the trap range and watch them really just bud, boys and girls. You know, our girls were some of the best shooters that we had on the team at the time. But to watch them grow and develop a new skill and have a respect for firearms, that, yeah, you know what, this is a lot of fun. I really shouldn't be listening to the people who are telling me that I'm a terrorist for wanting to have this shotgun and come out here and shoot clay targets, right? But it builds a skill set that's important. It builds your awareness around firearms. It builds your awareness towards the skills that you need to be able to deploy that weapon or that firearm in a hunting field or in a combat situation. Especially if you're going to be carrying a firearm for concealed carry, you need to be able to train yourself to engage other people. And that's a real challenge. And that's something that a lot of people don't think about. When the Second Amendment was written, it was actually written as the First Amendment. They felt that it was so important, Thomas Jefferson and the Founding Fathers did. He felt that it was so important that a free people were able to defend themselves against a tyrannical government, that they wanted that to be the keystone of our Constitution. Given all the history that they had with fighting, with tyranny, with how a government in their past and their ancestors' past just rolled over people. You will do what we say. We're the government, period. You will pray the way we pray. You will go to this school the way we want you to. You will work in this area. You will get this training. All of that. You will own this piece of property or not. And they wanted the Second Amendment to ensure against that sort of government ever taking hold here in America. But common sense got the best of them, and they put the number one defender of freedom first, and that was God and our First Amendment. But it shows how important their own safety was. That that they would put firearms and ownership of firearms and the training of firearm owners at the top of the list. So we have that right here in America. Lots of other people in the world don't have that right. Many have said that war doesn't really come to America because of our armed populace. I suppose that could be true, but I don't know when that quote or that theory came about. So perhaps we didn't really have bombs at that time. Maybe we didn't have satellite missiles or other types of ways of attacking a country where, quite honestly, small arms are really meaningless. When we look at the situation in Ukraine, that country is allowed to own firearms. I was surprised to see that, actually. I had never really cared to look at all into the laws or regulations, any kind of constitution of the Ukraine country or government until recently, and I was pleasantly surprised to know that their citizens can own firearms. Now it's much more restricted than it here is in the United States, but they are allowed to own them, they are allowed to shoot them, they are allowed to seek out training and things of that nature. But they cannot be carried out in public, generally speaking. They have to be properly stored at home. So they do have limitations. But the point is that there's a familiarity there. They were able to own them, they were able to use them, they were able to train with them. So these people had that background. Fast forward to February 24th, Russia had been building up and amassing their troops on the border of Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. And then they had inevitably invaded. What struck me about this whole thing that I think is being ignored by the media, they're touching on it, but they're not talking about it in specifics. And that's what we're doing here today. One of the first actions President Zelenskyy of Ukraine did, other than being heroic and staying behind, what's the famous quote? I don't need a ride, I need ammo. How awesome is that guy? Why isn't he an American? All right, that's what we need here. Okay, that's the kind of mentality we need here in our leadership. Zelenskyy said, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here with my people. I'm fighting for this country. This is my home. Poland isn't my home. Germany isn't my home. France isn't my home. The UK isn't my home. America is not my home. This is my home, and I will defend it. And I will defend it against anyone, whether it's a mouse or a bear. And it's what he's doing. And that's the same mindset that our founding fathers have. It's the same mindset that has been diminished over the generations of Americans as we've become complacent with our safety, with the amenities that we have, relying on our technology for fun, but not in Ukraine. Zelenskyy was a comedian. He's the Ronald Reagan of their time. He really is. He was a comedian. And now he's a war fighter. He's a hardened fighter. He's thwarted, to my knowledge, 3 assassination attempts in the last week. He refuses to hide. He's broadcasting. He wants people to know the greatness of his country and his countrymen. After he decided to stay there and make these comments, what did he do? He armed his people. He gave out, I don't know a number, many thousands, tens upon thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not more than that, firearms to civilians. But meanwhile, other people who even have the opportunity to evacuate, women, elderly, just younger people, are staying behind to fight. And he armed them with guns that they didn't have, to defend their country against invaders. And that struck me, because for all the nonsense that we hear about how guns are bad and it's all anti-government, and those of us on the Second Amendment side are saying, no, we want our guns to defend ourselves against any kind of tyranny, really. If that's what you want to be defending yourself against. Why we have the Second Amendment is so that we have the ability We can have our own weapons to fight back against invaders of our country. And the Ukrainians are learning that. They're learning that as they go. That, yeah, you know what? An armed populace can stop a massive government intrusion into our country. Russia is exponentially larger than Ukraine. The military, I think it's 6 or 7 times larger than the Ukrainian military. But the people in Ukraine have decided to stay there and fight and destroy their enemy. And that is key. And it's being totally overlooked. The equalizer here was Zelenskyy made the decision to arm his population. Our leaders here in America need to take note of that and say, you know what, we already are armed. This is a good thing. And an event such as this is precisely why we have the Second Amendment and why we should be promoting it. But the Second Amendment should not be political hot potato, it should not be bastardized, it should not be thrown in the mix with all that type of nonsense. What's going on in Ukraine demonstrates the importance and the validity of our Second Amendment. What's going on in Ukraine also confirms a lot of what I and other firearms instructors teach our students. Combat mindset. I cannot tell you how many times in one class, my classes go about 5 hours or more, but generally about 5 hours. I cannot count how many times in that class period I will beat into the heads of the students. It's all about your mindset. It's not about what kind of firearm you have. It's not necessarily about how much time you spend at the range. What are you doing at the range? What are you thinking about when you're shooting? When you're doing a tactical reload, when you're going from target to target and dropping a magazine or reloading a magazine between your arms or between your armpit, when you do a draw and you come across your chest, why are you coming across your chest? Is it because you have a wall there, or is it because you have an immediate attacker you're trying to get away from, right? It's the mindset. What are you doing? Are you shooting at a piece of paper, or are you envisioning an actual attacker in front of you? And that's what you should be doing, otherwise your training is really kind of useless. The combat mindset is absolutely paramount to everything else that might be going on in your mind at that time. Combat mindset is simple definition. It is the will to win. There are several levels of a result in a combat situation, such as what the regular citizens of Ukraine are fighting for right now as I'm standing here talking to you. They have 3 options. They can win, they can fight to survive, or they can lose. That's it. What's the difference there? Well, they clearly don't want to. They clearly do not want to lose, right? Do they want to survive? Technically, yeah. But I think they want to win. Losing and surviving are the same thing. If they lose, Putin takes over, Russia takes over, communism takes over, authoritarian government will take over. They're going to be surviving in that climate if they survive, but they still have lost. So first they will lose, and then they will survive in that new climate, which they don't want. Winning, one, puts them on the top of the food chain in Europe, because they're like, wow, these people just crushed Europe, crushed Russia. It provides their people with amazing spirit, amazing motivation to continue going in life, right? Amazing morale. It's fantastic. Winning is what you want to do. It's what the Ukrainian people want to do. They're taking those guns, and they have that combat mindset. When you hear these people talking, and they have people, there's celebrities, there's a musician that I saw, there's the 2 boxers, the mayor and former world middleweight champion, I believe, who are in Ukraine. There are grandparents there, there are athletes there. There's all sorts of people, I guess, and who just they're not going anywhere. They're not leaving. There was a lady who I believe is part of the Ukrainian parliament who was interviewed the other day. How grateful she was for her gun, for her rifle, that she will be able to defend herself against an attacker, that she will be able to shoot the enemy. That's amazing. That is really amazing, because one day these people are sitting there talking about, fashion show or a boxing match. And like a switch turned on, and now they're just in the trenches. I'm going to defend myself. I'm going to shoot somebody. Anybody who comes down this road, if they're Russians, if they're Russian invaders, I'm going to shoot them. That is scary. Think about that, how we would handle that here in this country. Do you have the ability to do what they're doing in Ukraine? We have our Second Amendment. We have our rifles. We have our ammo. But do we have the will to fight? Do we have the combat mindset? I think if we were in that situation, I believe we would. I absolutely do. But they're demonstrating it right now for the rest of the world, and it should not be overlooked. It should not be minimized. A company right here in Wisconsin the other day announced they're sending 1 million rounds. They're donating 1 million rounds to the Ukrainian effort, and that's to the civilian people. Think about that. So they're using AK-47s, right? That's I know you can get different magazines for those. 30 rounds in a magazine. That's a lot of magazines. The resolve from the rest of the world has been amazing for the Ukrainians, and hopefully soon Russia's defeated one way or the other. And it's all going to come down to what we've talked about here today. We've had people in Ukraine, they were armed. They had training. They had a combat mindset and the will to win. And that's what's going to be the difference here. Free people defending freedom, defending their country in the face of monumental evil enemy. Huge challenges here, and they're keeping that at bay. So the next time you decide that you're going to go for a hunt, or you're going to go to the range, or you're going to buy a new firearm, don't do so without the gratitude of what our founding fathers did for us. Because we could very well find ourselves in a similar situation where the government has to give us their weapons. But what's happening right here, very unfortunately, of course, underscores the importance of the freedoms that we have as Americans and why we should be taking them exceptionally seriously and do everything we can to preserve them, defend them, and not let them be diminished. Have a great day. Thank you again for watching. God bless the people of Ukraine.